sure nobody walks out of this alive!
Make sure nobody walks out of this alive. Those were the exact words that replayed in Jordan Wells' mind the night everything exploded. But long before chaos reached his doorstep, Jordan, a black man, never imagined he'd be anywhere near the HOA board, let alone running for president of it. When he moved into Briarwood Heights in Lakeview Springs, he assumed the HOA was just a group of neighbors obsessed with lawn heights and newsletters. He never expected to meet a woman like Melanie Whitford. From the moment Jordan, a black homeowner, settled in, Melanie behaved like the entire subdivision was her personal property. She patrolled the sidewalks with a smile that never warmed her eyes, correcting people on rules she seemed to invent on the spot. The final straw arrived when she launched her self-appointed community protection unit. A handful of her followers dressed in tactical vests, dark glasses, and cheap badges. They strutted around the cul-de-sac like they were preparing for combat instead of greeting residents. Melanie spoke about them as if they were heroes, but to Jordan they looked like grown children playing police. If you ask Jordan, he never wanted drama. But after months of watching Melanie nitpick, intimidate, and enforce rules unevenly, especially toward certain neighbors who looked like him, he realized someone had to push back before she crowned herself queen of the block. So he did the unthinkable. He decided to run for HOA president. His first promise was simple: disarm the pretend cops. No firearms at neighborhood gatherings, no rifles riding around on golf carts, replace the nonsense with flashlights and radios. Jordan thought it was common sense. Melanie reacted like he had committed treason. The shock on her face said everything, like Jordan had just banned holidays or insulted her family. Within hours, word spread across group chats and neighbors picked sides. Half the community was relieved someone finally had a spine. The other half, Melanie's devoted followers, circulated whispers that Jordan was against safety and not the right kind of leader. The way she emphasized right kind made Jordan's stomach turn. Melanie wasted no time launching a smear campaign. She organized urgent meetings about preserving community values, words that felt pointed. Meanwhile, her so-called officers started sizing Jordan up. Whenever he walked his dog, they watched him from behind sunglasses, hands resting on their fake duty belts, muttering like he'd committed a crime. Jordan could feel the pressure building. Melanie wasn't the type to lose quietly, and this was only the beginning. Have you ever lived in a neighborhood where one person acted like they owned the entire community? Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you're tired of seeing people abuse power in places that should feel safe, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc. If you believe in justice, this is your place. Jordan could tell Melanie was only warming up. The moment his name appeared on the HOA ballot, her whole attitude shifted from nosy neighbor to full-blown dictator mode. That forced smile she normally wore vanished, replaced with a tight-lipped glare sharp enough to slice through drywall. She moved like someone who believed the neighborhood belonged to her, and Jordan was trespassing on her throne. She started digging deep. Melanie combed through old HOA files like a prosecutor hunting for a conviction. She pulled up every late fee, every noise complaint ever filed, even lawn measurements from before Jordan owned a tape measure. She hunted for anything she could twist into a disqualification. But the neighborhood wasn't blind. People knew exactly what she was doing. They'd seen her harass families, bully newcomers, and hand out fines like party favors, mostly to people who didn't fit her ideal look for Briarwood Heights. The truth was, residents were exhausted from the spying, the threats, the letters over mailbox colors, the constant surveillance disguised as community care. Jordan's campaign didn't need fancy promises. He offered the one thing they all secretly prayed for: an end to Melanie's reign. That alone made him a local hero overnight. And Melanie hated it. She held emergency gatherings that were nothing more than rants about how Jordan would destroy the values this neighborhood was built on. What she really meant was he threatened her gossip circle, her chokehold on decisions, and her obsession with control. Her security unit sat behind her at those meetings like hired muscle, arms folded, sunglasses on indoors, staring down anyone who dared nod in Jordan's favor. Soon, strange warnings began appearing. One morning, Jordan opened his mailbox to a folded note. Back off if you know what's good for you. Another showed up with a poorly drawn bullet and the words, last chance. Talia begged him to drop the campaign, but Jordan couldn't. It wasn't only about him anymore. It was about every family Melanie had humiliated. Then came the turning point. At the next HOA meeting, when Jordan stood to speak, the room erupted in applause. Neighbors clapped, some even stood, fed up, ready for freedom. Melanie's jaw locked so hard Jordan thought her teeth might crack. For the first time, her control slipped. The fear she once commanded was fading. But that's what made her dangerous. Because after that night, the looks from her patrol grew darker. Their slow drives past his home lasted longer. Engines idled outside at odd hours. Something was brewing, something ugly, lurking just ahead. The air around Briarwood Heights felt charged, like the neighborhood was holding its breath before a storm. That storm arrived at exactly 2:07 a.m. A thunderous blast punched through the silence, jolting Jordan out of sleep. For a split second, he thought it was fireworks, until a second, sharper explosion ripped into the bedroom wall, spraying plaster across the bed. Talia screamed, clutching her belly as debris rained down. Another round tore through the hallway, shattering family photos and sending glass skidding across the floor like ice. Jordan's heart pounded so hard he thought his chest would burst. He grabbed Talia and pulled her to the ground as more shots erupted. This wasn't vandalism. Someone was unleashing gunfire on their home. Jordan crawled toward the window, keeping low, and through the chaos caught sight of three figures outside, dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, the same ridiculous vests Melanie had handed out like uniforms. Except tonight, they weren't playing pretend. Muzzle flashes lit the yard as they fired like they were storming a barricade, not attacking a family in their sleep. Talia's breath hitched. She gasped in pain. Jordan looked down and saw blood seeping through her nightshirt. A bullet had grazed her side. Panic and fury slammed through him. He fumbled for his phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands, shouting their address as he dragged Talia toward the back of the house. The dispatcher responded with a calm, practiced tone that felt almost surreal against the bullets ripping through walls. Jordan didn't wait. He grabbed a chair, smashed the back window, and helped Talia through it. They scrambled behind the storage shed, Talia trembling, one hand pressed to her wound. The gunfire stopped. Voices hissed from the front yard, urgent, angry. Then tires screeched as a truck sped off into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. When police finally arrived, the scene resembled a battlefield. Bullet holes riddled the siding, shell casings glittered in the yard. Blood stained Talia's hand and clothes. An officer whispered, almost to himself, "What kind of monster would do something like this?" Jordan didn't need to guess. Melanie had crossed a line no one ever thought she would. And after that night, he wasn't running a campaign anymore. He was preparing for war. By sunrise, the incident had already escalated far beyond neighborhood drama. Police tape wrapped around the Wells home, investigators combed through shell casings, and detectives took statements with grim faces. What started as a power struggle over an HOA had turned into a criminal case that the county wasn't taking lightly. Evidence surfaced quickly: surveillance footage, tire tracks, and fragments of overheard threats. It didn't take long for the authorities to connect the attack to Melanie's so-called security team. Within a week, the three shooters were located. One was found hiding in a rundown motel, another in his mother's cluttered garage, and the third was caught trying to torch a pickup truck, likely the vehicle used during the attack. Each arrest made headlines in the local news. But the shock came when officers arrived at Melanie Whitford's door. She was seated at her kitchen table, pretending to be clueless while officers placed her in handcuffs. She cried misunderstanding the entire walk to the patrol car, but not a single neighbor stepped forward to defend her. The charges were serious: attempted murder, conspiracy, impersonating law enforcement, reckless endangerment, and illegal possession of firearms. Prosecutors made it clear they intended to push for maximum sentencing. During the trial, the mountain of evidence stacked higher by the day. There were text messages, voice notes, and even bank transfers linking Melanie directly to funding the attack. But the breaking point was the shooters' testimonies. Facing decades in prison, two of them admitted Melanie was the mastermind, describing how she encouraged them to teach Jordan a lesson before Election Day. The jury took less than 24 hours to reach a verdict. Melanie Whitford received 50 years in prison without the possibility of early release. The shooters were given 30, 25, and 20-year sentences, depending on cooperation. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, broken only by the sound of Melanie sobbing as she was led away. In the aftermath, the HOA swiftly dissolved the fake patrol and called for an emergency election. This time, there was no competition. Jordan Wells was voted in unanimously. His first act as HOA president was to ban any form of armed or unauthorized security and implement full transparency rules to prevent anyone from misusing power again. Talia recovered and peace slowly returned to Briarwood Heights. The bullet holes in Jordan's walls were patched, but the memory of that night would never fade. It stood as a reminder of how far some people will go to cling to control and how justice eventually finds them. If this story kept you watching to the end, hit that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for more real consequences and powerful justice moments. If you believe bullies should never win, you're in the right place.